good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Jared Hornsby, and I'm here today to help answer any general or technical questions that you may have. But before we get started, I would like to welcome you to today's webinar, Retail Reinvented, a masterclass in creating digital experiences that click. Here's today's timing breakdown. These numbers are just rough, so please don't hold me to these. At any point during today's webinar, if you have a question, please don't hesitate to submit using the Ask Question tab at the bottom of your screen. You can also chat with your fellow attendees by clicking the audience chat that's also at the bottom of your screen. Please let us know where you're coming in from. Here's a little bit about us over at CMS Wire. We were founded in 2003, and we cover the primary topics that you see here on this slide. You can read about our great content and register for upcoming conferences and webinars, all by visiting cmswire.com. I'd like to thank today's sponsor, Contentstack, for making today's webinar possible. Contentstack empowers marketers and developers to deliver composable digital experiences the speed of their imagination. And you can learn more about them at contentstack.com. Today on the Contentstack side, we have the Senior Manager of Solutions Marketing, Marina Rusinow. Marina, please take it away.
Hi, everyone. My name is Marina. I'm so happy to be speaking with all of you today. I am the Senior Manager of Solutions Marketing here at Contentstack. I have about 13 years in the solutions and product marketing space under my belt, working with Fortune 500 companies like Microsoft and SAP and startups such as Taboola and Simon Data. And I'll pass it to Matthew for his introduction.
Thank you. Hi, I am Matthew Schaeffer. I use he, him, and pronouns, and I'm coming to you from Seattle, Washington. I'm a senior manager at REI, and I support a team of 4 programs that are involved in building, evolving, and operating our digital platforms. I have something of a long and winding career path. I started as a journalist and editor, but for the past decade plus at this point, I've been focusing on the tools and platforms that are used to power customer experiences, be that on news websites or on e-commerce sites like REI. And to the last bullet on the slide, I definitely am a fan of getting outdoors here in the Northwest. I spend as much time as possible snowboarding, surfing, shopping, trail running, and generally just getting out in nature whenever I can. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Marina to talk more about the current state of retail.
Thank you so much, Matthew. So to give everyone a little overview of our agenda for today, we're going to set the stage with talking about the current state of retail. Then we're going to get into why more and more retailers are choosing to go composable and pursuing digital experience solutions. And then we'll hear from Matthew again about REI's mission to bring the Green Vest experience online to their customers. And then lastly, we'll close out with some Q&A. So without further ado, I'll get into the state of retail today. Today, we see more and more digital touchpoints emerging daily to meet really highly demanding customer needs. By 2006, it's an estimated 24% of retail purchases that will take place online, totaling $8.1 trillion. And the reason why more and more brands are pursuing new technology solutions is that their legacy systems are slowing down their innovation. Brands are having this challenge and this great mandate to do more with less, to repurpose their existing marketing dollars, and to ultimately maximize their impact of their customer experiences. And so in order to do this, retailers are looking to scale their operations and migrate to a composable DXP solution. And we'll get into what exactly that means. I'd like to share some stats with everyone about what we've seen from some research that Contentstack has composed. So only 10% of brands believe that their CMS completely supports their business needs. Only 17% of brands can launch new marketing initiatives in under 3 weeks, and only 9% of brands can execute standard online marketing campaigns in a week. And so what this means is that brands today are really not prepared to continue to meet the needs of these rapidly evolving retail customers. I'd like to get into a little bit of what we define to be composable commerce and what this means for retail brands today. So what composable commerce looks like in action is that digital interaction really becomes the primary mechanism for customer engagement. Beyond that, it's omnichannel in nature, which means that retailers are able to connect the dots across every channel through which you use to reach your customers. And beyond that, you have the scalability and freedom to build unique experiences with what really turns out to be the marketing tech stack of your dreams. We believe that the composable commerce solution is truly central to any future-proof retail operation. So why composable commerce? Why are more and more companies choosing this route to reach their customers and deliver more personalized experiences? For one, it enables brands like yours to have a faster content publishing system. It gives you the flexibility and scale to automate your manual tasks both internally and externally. And it allows you to have a seamless turnkey integration with either tools that you already know and love or tools that you have yet to discover that will help you scale your business and deliver even better customer experiences. Beyond that, there's this great piece of the improved developer experience, which essentially means that it allows your marketers to be more self-sufficient, removing the need for a marketer to ping IT anytime they need to swap out an image or a headline on a web page. Really enabling all of your teams to move faster and scale and collaborate much more effectively. Now, Matthew, I know that you wanted to speak to some of the key drivers for why REI chose this sort of solution.
Yeah, I wanted to jump in here because when I was looking at this slide and looking through this, pretty much all 5 of these resonated to me. The key drivers that you're calling out are customer expectations, competitive pressures, technological advancements, cost efficiencies, and time to market. And in my mind, these are all of the drivers that are powering what I think everybody is talking about today as digital transformation. And we're in the midst of this right now. We've been going through this for a couple of years, and we have a couple more or a few more years ahead of us as we try to navigate this changing landscape. And it really is driven by this first factor. Customer expectations are changing. Sites like Amazon are just raising the expectations for what people have. They want to see things that are more meaningful to them, that are more relevant to them, and they want to have these experiences that have less and less friction. Whether it's to purchase something or to find information, do research, whatever they're trying to do, they want it to be easy. And I think a lot of brands are realizing that, and that's where this competitive pressure is coming from. Essentially, the table stakes to be a successful online retailer are increasing across the board, and everybody is trying to figure out how to keep up. And that there are some common things you need to do. I think that sense of relevance and personalization and giving customers what they need and meeting their expectations is a big piece of it. But every company needs to put their own lens on that and figure out what that means to them and then build those capabilities. And that leads into the technological advancements. I'll talk more about this when I get into the story of REI that I'm going to tell today. But really, we've had an online e-commerce presence since the 90s. And we have a lot of the same sorts of systems, and we're doing a lot of the same things that we've been doing since the inception of that. And really what's happening today is there's more and more pressure being put on these systems to do things that they weren't necessarily designed for. Delivering relevant and personalized experiences across channels at scale is really, it's a new thing. And for systems that are already redlining in a lot of ways, it's a challenge to evolve them. And that's pushing us to change the way we're thinking about our tech stacks and thinking about these systems that we're building. And one of the kind of great things about this, while it's not inexpensive to build these platforms, what they do is reduce the costs of doing all the things that you want to do. A lot of that comes down to having less need to do manual work and more being able to automate these experiences and have business roles and ultimately algorithms start delivering these customer experiences for you. And that also increases the time to market. So all of these play together. And I think all of these are key and pertinent as we talk about how we build these next generation technical stacks and systems. So I'll give it back to you.
Thank you so much, Matthew. What great context. So to piggyback on that, some of the core themes driving growth that we see today is that it's not just enough to have SKUs all over the place. There's this need for companies to have really high quality, engaging content all across their site. The shopper experience becomes that much more important, both in-store and online. And especially seeing the trajectory of where retail is going, that online experience has to be supported by your technology systems to really create the best possible digital shopper experience. So now I'll actually pass it back to Matthew to share more about REI's experience with building the next generation customer experience platform. Matthew?
Yeah, thank you. I want to take the next maybe 10 to 15 minutes and really talk about REI's next generation CX platform, what that means to us, and how we're trying to build it. For us, next generation customer experiences really mean being able to provide insights, information, and inspiration to help our customers get outside in whatever way is meaningful to them. And ultimately, this comes down to something I mentioned just a minute ago. This comes down to delivering relevant, contextual experiences across channels and at scale. And so before getting into that digital side, I want to talk about the REI co-op for a moment. One of the things that REI is known for is our stores, which have, in a lot of ways, become meccas for people who love getting outside. And as a company, our mission and our core belief is that a life outside is a life well lived. We want to share the outdoors with a growing number of people because of all the benefits we see in getting out there. What you can see on the screen are two images. The top one is of our flagship store in Seattle. And then the bottom is an interior from our Denver store. And I hopefully these just give you a sense of the type of experience you can get by going to these stores. But really, if you haven't been to one, you should go check it out yourself. One of the key components to making this store experience so great is really our green vests. And the guy you see on the screen is not an actual green vest. That's actually Nick Offerman playing the role of REI Dave in the movie A Walk in the Woods. But we do have a bunch of really talented, really amazing green vests that work at all our stores. And really, these people are the lifeblood of REI and the REI store experience. To a person, they are deep experts, subject matter experts in the activities that they focus in and at the gear in the gear they sell. But what they're also able to do is really understand the full scope of REI's offerings and bring that to our customers in a way that's meaningful to them and that helps them do whatever they're trying to do. And so most people know REI as an e-commerce store. Or as a retail store, and they know our e-commerce business. We sell a ton of gear, we sell a ton of apparel, but there's a bunch of other stuff that we offer that people don't know about as much. We have this huge library of expertise content that's just this deep informational resource for doing pretty much whatever you want to do outside. We have these award-winning adventure trips. We have classes that can teach you how to fix a tire or can take you out on a kayaking trip. We've got local events. We've got a growing rentals business. We have a growing used business. So there are all these different offerings. And when you go into a store and you talk to people, they're able to explain all these different things to you and help you kind of curate and pick from that and figure out what's meaningful to you. When you get online, that's a little different. It's more challenging. And so this is where we're trying to reimagine our digital experiences so that we can start bringing together all those offerings in a meaningful way to our customers without overwhelming them. What you see on the screen are a handful of our digital touch points today. We've got this microsite based rei.com, which you can see some of the screenshots of. We've got app, we have a robust email campaign, we have Google results, there are other things, there's social and other channels as well. And really the challenge for us is figuring out how do we make these customer experiences useful and insightful every step of the way. And the way we're thinking about doing that is with what we talk about as intelligent customer experiences. The definition for this is uniquely assembled interactions between an organization and a customer in which the content responds to the customer's individual content. So that really hints at that idea of personalization. And why these are so important to us and so valuable, and really what we see as this next generation of customer experiences are listed out below. These intelligent customer experiences deliver meaningful and useful content across channels. So they can serve this kind of consistent message and this consistent experience anywhere that your customers are interacting with you. They can be customized for different customer segments. So whatever that means to you, we talk about breaking it down by activity, breaking it down by geolocation, but there are myriad ways you can go about this. They reduce the transactional friction for the customers. They make it easier for them to accomplish whatever they're trying to accomplish. And finally, they make it easier for our internal teams by reducing all the manual work and the overhead. And they often can lead to allowing resources to focus less on a lot of these executional tasks and more on solving the bigger, more interesting problems that they're going after. And what we found in discussions, both internally and with other companies, is there are these core characteristics of these intelligent customer experiences and the platforms that deliver them. The first one is a content that's structurally rich and semantically categorized. The way REI goes about this is through this process called content modeling, where when we build content, we try to think of all the different places it's going to show up to our customer, be it in an email, in a social post, on a website, on a search result, or a product page, wherever it's going to show up. We try to think about that and incorporate that in a content model. So that might involve having different lengths headlines and abstracts, or different lengths of body content, or some have more robust experiences or multiple CTAs, or whatever that looks like. We try to think of that up front and incorporate that all when we create the content. And we build out those models so that they can be as consistent as possible, and so we can anticipate how these are going to show up in our front-end experiences. Second, and one of the really big pieces to this, is having a taxonomy that connects the content and customer data and metadata. And what this really means is having a common language that's used across our platforms to talk about both our customers and our offering. So an example of this is, if we want to talk about a customer who likes hiking, we need to use the word hiking or a common synonym of hiking, put that metadata on our customer profile, and then also put the same metadata hiking onto our content. So ultimately, we can have a business rule that we can write that can say, this customer is interested in hiking, show them this hiking content, and having those tags on the content is what allows us to start automating that content delivery. The third piece, and something I kind of alluded to in the first bullet, was this COPE, or create once, publish everywhere idea, which is really this concept of a single source of truth for your content. The way that content is often created these days is marketing, or whoever is doing your initial kind of campaigns or your events planning will come up with a set of assets, images, copy, whatever that looks like. They'll give it to your different channels, then every channel will kind of manipulate that content so that it works within that channel. The idea of COPE and single source of publishing is you can take out all those middlemen. You can create the content in a way that works across all these different channels. And so once you ingest it into your systems, you don't have to do that manipulation. It also helps because if you want to make a change to that content, and say you have a great expert advice article on the 10 best hiking shoes, and you want to put this in multiple places, but you realize you want to change out one of the shoes, or you want to update a link, you can do that in one place and then have that update pervade across all of the different uses of that content across your sites, and you don't have to go in every one and change them individually. The last two on here are a little more technical, but they're very important as well. One is the separation of content from presentation. So basically, we're making content that is stripped down and does not have configurations or presentation elements, because we're building customer experience products, front-end customer experience products that handle all that presentation. So they can take this core set of content, and then the homepage can decide how they want it to show up versus, maybe a different landing page or a search page or whatever the case may be. And finally, there's this idea of composable component and service-based architecture. What this really comes down to, at least for us, is deconstructing this idea of the monolith, of having this one big, massive code that serves all of your different experiences. If you can start breaking that down and breaking it into more streamlined and more organized chunks, it gives you a lot more flexibility, not only in the ability to do updates and make changes to this code base without having to, shut everything down to do these updates, but also it gives you more flexibility in choosing the right tools and the right integrations that you need to do whatever you're trying to do. And so the last thing I want to talk about before I hand it back over to Marina are the big takeaways we've had so far in working on these platforms. And like I mentioned earlier, this has been a multi-year process, and it really is, for me, like what it means to go through a digital transformation. The first one is you need to embrace the ambiguity. There's this idea that I think about a lot that is technical challenges versus adaptive challenges. A technical challenge is something that you do all the time, you know how to do. For us, say we put banners on our search pages all the time. We have a pretty good idea how to do that. If that breaks, we could go in and troubleshoot and figure out how we need to tweak it. But basically, we know how to do it. But what these adaptive challenges are kind of this whole different type of problem to solve. And in these cases, you generally know where you are, or you can figure out where you are. You have a pretty good idea of where you want to go, but you don't know exactly what it takes to get where you're going. You don't have all the information you need. And so you need to accept that as you're progressing, you're going to be learning. And it's going to change the way you think about the problem and change the way you think about getting to your destination. And it's just it's this learning mindset that gives you more, I think, flexibility and more ability to kind of roll with some of the punches and flow a little bit more in what could be some really challenging journeys. The second one, and this has been a really interesting lesson to me, who works on a lot of the operations pieces, building technology is hard. Without question, building those component and service-based architectures are hard. But what we found to be even more challenging, especially over the long term, is managing change, driving adoption, and imposing governance to these systems. So the idea here is, like, once you build these systems, you're just really starting. You have to help people learn how to use these systems. And there's a ton of change management material out there that people can use to help ease this. But it's a whole thing in and of itself to try to figure out how to help the people part of this work adapt to these new changes. And that's true for driving adoption. And then as these systems are created, a lot of work goes into making sure that they're used consistently, that people don't start making workarounds and having ad hoc tools, because the real value for these systems come when you can get more and more teams using them and having this kind of common pipeline for creating content or customer experiences, because that gives you the ability to make them consistent and make them reusable and make them work across channels. A third, a really good learning was what I've been calling speed through alignment. I stole that from somebody at work, but it's essentially what this says is that it's oftentimes a lack of upstream alignment that causes downstream waste. That's some lean language, but I worked with a senior project manager or a senior program manager to do a content value stream mapping project, which really was looking at what is the value we're delivering to the customer when we're creating content, from the strategy phase all the way through to the channel delivery phase. Like, what does that process look like? What's the value? Where do we have problems? And what we found was a lot of the problems that happen downstream, a lot of the swirl and disorganization and manual work that happens downstream is caused by a lack of alignment and a lack of consistency up at the beginning of the process. I always think about it like if you're hitting a golf shot or a baseball or something, and if the farther you hit it, or the farther the ball travels, if it's a little bit offline, the more and more off target it gets. And that's the model I see in my head with this. If you guys aren't aligned at the beginning, if people are going in different directions, that's only going to get exacerbated as you go farther and farther down this value stream. The last two, one, it's all about the data and the metadata. I talked about this before with that common taxonomy, but really it's this enrichment to the content, enrichment to the customer experiences based on what's meaningful, based on meaningful metadata to your business, that really is the secret sauce of putting this whole system together, because that really is what allows you to pair content in different systems and allows you to automate content delivery. So you really need to be thoughtful about that data and get your data in order in any way you can. And it's a big challenge, but it's a worthwhile one to undertake. Last but not least, it takes a village. this is true both within REI and in this community of practice that we've built, talking to other companies that are going through similar transformations and that are going after similar types of customer experiences. This is a challenge that really for REI is really an enterprise challenge. We need to build these systems so that teams across the enterprise can use these. And that takes a lot of work, a lot of learning, a lot of discussion, a lot of change. And we've greatly benefited from having these external teams that we can talk to that are going through similar things, that may be a little bit ahead of us and can help show us the way, or maybe even are a little bit behind us and can make us feel good about where we are and the progress that we've made and the help that we can give them. And so these are the main takeaways that I have found working. There are a ton more, but it's been a fascinating process and I'm excited to keep going. But with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Marina to talk through a few more use cases.
Holy smokes. Thank you so much, Matthew. What a tough act to follow. I wish we were live so we could all stand up and applaud. Thank you so much for sharing that very compelling story. I actually want to pause for us to do a quick poll just to get an idea of the folks joining us today. What is driving you to consider or potentially consider a composable commerce solution? We'll give everyone a moment there. And it looks like the results here will appear in the surveys tab. I'll just give folks another moment. See, let me just also take a moment to check our chat. Looks like lots of you are saying hello. I'll give folks another few seconds to complete the survey. So based on our survey, it looks like a lot of folks are looking for faster time to market. Some folks, it looks like, are looking for the need to publish content faster. A lot of you are facing limitations to your current marketing tech stack, as well as seeing the challenge to deliver a more personalized digital experience. So it really is all of the above for so many of you, which is great to hear because that sounds like it's really in line with why all of you are joining us here today. So I'll get a little bit more into like the reasons why retailers like yourselves are choosing to pursue this sort of technology solution. Ultimately, it allows you to tell more stories. You have this opportunity to make your products really speak to your customers. And similarly to Matthew's experience, him sharing how REI has done that with the iconic green vest experience, it integrates every component of your customer experience, both in person and online. With that, you're also able to reach more customers. You can reach your customers anywhere, anytime, in all the places they're already shopping. And then eventually this leads to driving more conversions with higher engagement and seeing those numbers go up and up through the funnel, both digitally and across all the channels that you already use to engage with your customers. I wanted to take a moment to share just some of the experiences that other Contentstack customers have seen with using a composable DXP. So K2 Sports, a well-known outdoors retailer, by replacing their slow monolithic solution, they actually saw a 75% boost in their productivity. Bol.com, a popular Netherlands retailer, increased their CTR by 40% and increased their accessibility from 87 to 94%. Then we have Global Burberry retailer, luxury retailer, which I'm sure so many of us are familiar with. They were actually able to accelerate their content creation by 80% and bulk publish their content in up to 50 languages globally. So this is just a sampling of some of the really phenomenal use cases that we've already seen, and why more and more retailers are continuing to pursue this sort of solution. So before we get into our Q&A, I wanted to begin to outline some key considerations before you start to consider something like this for your brand. I think it's really important to consider what kind of shopping experience are you looking to deliver online. We heard this in Matthew's story, where REI really had to evaluate what are all the different services that they want to offer to their shoppers online as part of their digital personalized experience. Then it comes down to thinking about, will your team really be able to innovate faster and be more agile? And will this technology really help you adapt to your evolving customer needs based on what those needs really look like for you today and what you can begin to anticipate? And then the really big question, which I'm sure many of your key stakeholders are going to be the most concerned with, is how much is all of this going to cost and what will the impact on revenue look like? Matthew, did you have anything else you might want to add to this? What were some of the key considerations that you guys encountered?
Yeah, I think, again, like all of these resonate. I think when I think about the goals, it goes back to that idea of all a lot of companies are going after these same experiences because we're seeing the success that companies that are able to personalize and that are able to give customers more valuable experiences are having. And really, what it comes down to is each company figuring out what that means to them and really defining those goals and ideally building this North Star that they can go after, and that can be a lens through which they filter their decisions. Another one that jumps out to me on here is this idea of agility. When we have had tools in the past that are part of a bigger monolith, it gets very hard to kind of rapidly update feature sets and rapidly adapt to changing business needs. Multi-channel is one example of that. Responsive websites are another example of that from a few years ago. There are these kind of common technical and digital innovations that happen that start to gain widespread adoption, and you need that agility to be able to adapt to that, and again figure out what it means for your own business, but still be able to move as quickly as is feasible into that space. And then finally, return on investment is a big one. Like that's one of the biggest challenges of this is these are long-term projects. They take multiple years, and oftentimes, as we're seeing now, they go through some pretty dramatic macroeconomic changes are happening as you're trying to pursue these projects. And so you just need to really be clear about what the value is, be clear on your North Star, drive that alignment, and understand it might not be a direct line to get where you want to go. In a lot of cases, you might take 2 steps forward and then 2 steps back and then 1 step forward, and it becomes a little bit of a dance. But I think ultimately, it's the direction that most of us are going to continue to head for the foreseeable future.
Definitely. We're about to get into our top takeaways for this entire session, but I'd also just love to invite everyone to submit their questions for the Q&A. So if you have something that you've been dying to ask Matthew or myself, we're about to get into that portion of today's webinar. So just to recap some of what we've talked about today, legacy technologies have proven to be a blocker to delivering more innovative, more personalized customer experiences. And we've heard about some use cases, REI most specifically, about companies who are trying to overhaul that technology to do exactly what we've talked about today, to deliver that personalized, very specialized content everywhere their customer is already shopping. The other takeaway that we've talked about is keeping up with customer needs requires that flexibility to customize and personalize. That is becoming more and more important, and it's only going to become more and more demanding to keep up with these needs that your customers are currently facing today when it comes to their shopping experiences. Companies today have the need to innovate much faster, and that is really ultimately the key to driving higher conversions. And as we've kind of talked around today, composable commerce really is the key to enabling your brand to scale at every stage to deliver this sort of customer experience. So I hope you guys have gotten some great takeaways from the content today. Matthew, is there anything you'd like to add in our final wrap-up of takeaways before we get into the Q&A portion?
No, one thing that came to mind is, and when we're talking about faster innovation, I've had questions about what does that actually mean. So I thought I'd give one tangible example. It's a little bit dramatic, but one of the examples of us needing to rapidly adapt to a changing scenario was COVID. I think it put a lot of people in challenging situations. As most of you will remember, once COVID started, there was this kind of widespread shutdown. We shut down a lot of our stores for a while, and that's hard. I mean, even impossible for a business to sustain for an extended period of time. So one of the challenges we face is how do we address this? What can we do to help get our stores open again, help our customers navigate what's a really challenging time? And one of the things that came up was curbside pickup. We did not have that in place. And so we made this concerted effort to focus a number of different teams working across not only our digital site, but our stores to figure out how do we stand up curbside pickup so that we can have this low touch, no touch mechanism for customers to still get the stuff they need, to have this relief of getting outside during what was a very difficult pandemic. And I think there are a ton of examples of that sort of thing. And I just thought that might be helpful to point one of them out.
Definitely. That's a great example. Thank you so much, Matthew. At this time, I will pass it back to Jared to help us facilitate our Q&A portion of the webinar.
All right. Thanks so much, you two. That was an excellent presentation. All right, let's get into Q&A. Up first, I got a question for Matthew. What advice do you have for someone looking to begin getting buy-in for composable commerce tech?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I can only speak from experience. I think when we were thinking about this, we used some of these key change management principles, which were to define the value proposition, to really take some time and figure out what the value you're delivering by going this route is. And then you find your advocates, you find the people within your organization, ideally across departments or divisions, that understand what you're talking about and that can help advocate for your cause. And again, this all goes up to leadership. I think you have to be very clear on not only the vision and the value you can deliver to your customers, but as clear as feasible on the costs. There's only so much you can do when you're raising this up, but I think a lot of these things speak for themselves once you start crunching the numbers, once you start seeing what other companies are doing and how those innovations are benefiting them. I think there are a lot of ways to really show the value. And once you get leadership buy-in, that's the biggest step moving forward. And again, you need to understand these can be stop and start type experiences, but the North Star really doesn't change. So it also takes some tenacity and some perseverance.
And when you're transitioning into these more composable spaces, does that require a full rip and replace of existing technologies?
No, and I would argue that it can't really require a full rip and replace. I think the architectures to do the types of things e-commerce businesses or basically any business is trying to do online takes a number of different systems. For us, so I support 4 programs, and each of them are kind of oversee a different data pipeline is how I describe it. So we have product information, so details about all our products. We've got vendor information. We're a retailer, so we're bringing in specs and product information from all these different companies. We've got search data, search information, and we've got content. And all these are different pipelines that have different sets of tools. And that doesn't even start to speak to the customer data platform side, the analytics side. So I think what you need to do is have a very systematic approach. And really, this goes down to some of that content value stream mapping, some of your architectural mapping, to really understand what the capability sets of your different tools are and figure out where you can plug and play, where you get the biggest bang for your buck, and just build the sequenced roadmap for how you get where you want to go. In some cases, there's a little bit of a rip and replace when you think about this idea of a monolith, companies that are on a single platform that does, everything for them. It's a bigger undertaking to get to these composable stacks. So there is maybe a more significant or dramatic overhaul that happens in some of those cases. But I don't think I've ever seen a case where you just pull everything out. That would be honestly the ideal in some cases, because starting from scratch is a very, like, it's a dream sometimes that I have, that we could just start all over and build exactly what we want. But the reality is we have to do a lot of reverse engineering and a lot of customization of systems that we do have. And that's as hard, if not harder, than starting over. So there is, again, I'll go back to, like, this isn't easy, but I think that the value and the long-term value and the customer value is really speaks for itself once you get into the details.
Yeah. Sure. To piggyback off of that a little bit, thank you so much, Matthew, by the way. But with Contentstack, for example, we hear so many retailers come to us and say they've now been able to build their dream tech stack. And we talked about this a little bit, but essentially, if you choose to go this route, you're able to take a lot of the technology that you already know and love, or maybe you access a marketplace of other solutions you don't even know you need yet, to essentially create this dream tech stack of every touch point that you need to reach your customers in all the places where they already shop. So, for example, Contentstack's marketplace includes lots of turnkey integrations, Contentstack built applications, as well as our marketplace of partners that have their own applications that are super easy to install with the click of a button. So you can either bring over your technology that you already know and love, or you can find new solutions to do everything you need to do to deliver those more personalized experiences. So to sum that up, you absolutely do not need to rip and replace. It's almost better if you do come over with some semblance of what you're looking for in those customer experiences using your existing tooling.
Right. Thank you both very much. Another question here from Nick. Are you using ChatGPT or any other generative AI to enhance the digital experience? And if so, which one, and are there any drawbacks?
I can start on this one, Marina. Please jump in. I will say that this is a question I've been getting a lot recently. I was at a conference not long ago, and I would say maybe half of the conference content had switched to talk about generative AI, ChatGPT, having discussions with vendors. For us, I think we're still figuring out how to apply these technologies, and I would, from what I can tell, that's the case with a lot of companies. They're trying to define the use cases, define what it looks like to integrate these capabilities into systems that they already have in place. But also, I think people are trying to be very thoughtful. I know REI is trying to be very thoughtful about what are the implications of using something like this. I think it raises this whole set of kind of ethical, not to mention legal questions that I think you need to take into account before you rush to employ this technology. And so I will say there are some incredibly compelling use cases that I've heard. One that I heard recently was about customer reviews. It was proposed that you could use ChatGPT to go and look at 20 years of reviews for a product or a host of products, and then give a bullet point summary of pros and cons of all the different reviews over the, however long that product's been available. Something like that is incredibly compelling. And I think could add a ton of customer value, but I think we're taking a pragmatic approach. Nobody wants to get left behind, but I think we also want to do this in a responsible way, and that's where we are at REI, at least.
Yeah, I think you're spot on with that response, Matthew. And I think ultimately ChatGPT is still like a very hot, trendy thing, but I think it's really hard to predict the impact that it will have on customer experiences right now. I think it could be somewhat limiting when it comes to the personalization and customization component, because you wouldn't want to use it for just like the stock standard experience. And I think that is the beauty of composable technology, is you want to really double down on that personalization and customization of your experiences. So I think there's more to come on this trend, but Matthew, it sounds like you definitely have the right approach here.
All right, thank you very much. Another question here. How did you navigate risks and controls without sacrificing delivery or speed to market?
Yeah, that's an ongoing balance that you're trying to take. And I think the way that we're thinking about this, and hopefully this answers what you're getting at, is we know where we want to be down the road. We know what that like kind of beautiful North Star vision looks like. And what we need to figure out is how we can build towards that incrementally and do it in a way that we have a a pretty intensive testing and feedback loop every step of the way. Our goal is to build, add incremental value, do that kind of crawl, walk, run process as we build these systems out, as we build into things like personalization and relevance and integration of content from different lines of business. We're looking at ways that, yeah, we can add that incremental value and then do a lot of testing to make sure that what we're doing is working. And then the challenge and the opportunity, I think, both is that as you're doing that, you need to think of it in the context of where you want to be long-term and do the best you can to anticipate how these things can grow and evolve into these longer term experiences. And I think that's where your subject matter experts come in, and the people that are actually deep into the work, the developers, the product managers, the program managers come into play, because they're the ones that can really understand at that more nuanced level how you build, how you add value, how you deliver on your promises while you're still arcing towards that long-term goal. But it's going to be different from everyone, but I think that's the mindset you need to take.
All righty. Up next, got a question from Sarah. What KPIs are key in understanding if your digital message reached the right audience?
That can mean a lot of things for a lot of companies. We use some of the standard TOCA metrics, traffic, conversion, average order value. So we use a lot of the standard e-commerce metrics. But I think as we think about these longer term experiences, what they really mean to us is better supporting our members and our customers. And I think the way that we see success, see that manifested through metrics is through this idea of lifetime customer value. Instead of thinking about things on this transactional, like per visit approach, you start thinking about it over the course of your relationship with that customer. And so there are a lot of different metrics you can use under that umbrella. One of the ones that we think about is frequency of visit. Are customers coming back to REI more often? Because for us, that indicates that they're finding something of use, something of value. They're getting what they need, and they are starting to see us as a resource to return to. And so that's one example, but there are hosts of them when you start thinking about that more lifetime view of your customer and your relationship with your customer and your member.
Definitely. I think the easy one to start with is just conversion rate of online sales. If you're seeing an uptick in those after implementing a new form of technology and evaluating, like Matthew, like you said, like the time that someone spends on site, depending on what kind of product you're trying to sell. I think it really is going to depend on like your buyer life cycle too. Like certain products take much longer for folks to make a decision on. And so at that point, you're more focused on building the relationship with your customer and not necessarily trying to get them to purchase from that first visit to your site. So I think those metrics can look very different, but I think at a high level, that increase in conversion rate is a great one to start with, to report on.
Awesome. All right, we got time for another one here. This is a question from Matthew. How did you partner with your IT teams to implement your new infrastructure?
Yeah, it's an ongoing effort, and it's almost that we become one in a lot of cases. There's in our case, we kind of have the business side and we have the IT side, and then there are these product managers and program managers are really the connective tissue between those two, and so a lot of it again comes down to some of that change management. It can be challenging because some of these new tools require different skill sets, different developer sets, and they require a lot of those soft skills, the ability to collaborate, communicate. And so I would say that it has to be a partnership from day one, and it all starts with aligning on that vision and agreeing that that's where you need to go, and finding the people that support that and can help advocate for that, and then building that momentum, having leadership support, and kind of giving the directive that we are going after this vision is a key component of that. But that partnership between IT and the business I mean, that's the key to success. It has to start from day one. And so those product and program managers are really essential in connecting the two sides, the IT and the business side.
All right, fantastic. And I think that's going to be all the time we have for today. Thank you, Marina. Thank you, Matthew, so much for being here today. And thank you to Contentstack for sponsoring today's webinar. Last but not least, thanks to all of you out in the audience for your time and attention today. Today's webinar was recorded, and you'll be receiving a link to that recording in a follow-up email, so keep an eye on your inbox for that. In the meantime, thank you all so much, and once more, we will see you on the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you.